You know those conversations you have where you set up the conversation, you say, hey, this seems like an interesting person, a neat person, a cool person. I really want to get to know them, what they're doing, what they're up to, if it's a connection that I really want to build. Well, today's guest on At the Table is one of those people. While Paul and I don't talk on a regular basis, when we do, there is, to me, and I think to him, there's a genuine connection that is founding what's going on and where we want to go in this world together, whatever that looks like. So really glad he's here. Paul Can, yesican.com. Love that, K-A-N. Paul, welcome to At the Table. So glad you're here.
Thank you for having me, Ginger. I totally resonate with what you were saying. It kind of is one of those things where we just pick up wherever we left off. And every time we chat, it's like we've known each other forever, which is the beautiful thing about when you are deeply connected. So I'm very happy to be here. So
cool. Excellent. And one of these days I'm going to get to your neighborhood. And so then we'll do this in person for sure.
I would love that. I miss those in persons.
Yes. Right. You keep having people are rushing back together. So today with At the Table, the whole idea is that we talk with great people like Paul and share ideas and ask them to share ideas. And so Paul, let's talk a little bit about your background story, because people can go to yesican.com and Larry will put this in the show notes as well as the chat.
For myself, I think I came from a background in corporate. And I think growing up, I've always been this high achiever, if you want to call it that. I mean, I grew up in a very stereotypical Asian household where if you get 99, my mom's asking me, why didn't you get 100? So it was always one of those things where, I'm constantly, there is this very high, level of achievement that is expected. It's not even like, it's optional, it's expected. And so I think constantly from when I was a very young age, I have been in this place of finding my own identity of who I am without the influence of others. And from a very young age, I was told I was, too much, I was too loud, I was too rambunctious, I was too naughty, all the things, and not what was preferred, which was just to be quiet, just to, stay in your box, don't say anything, don't be too much. And another aspect of it was I always found and I always realized that I was different from everybody else. But what I didn't have words for at the time was that I was transgendered, and I didn't know that even existed at such a young age. And I spent most of my life trying to appease my family, my community, the people in my life to try to fit into this nice, neat box of who they wanted me to be, while completely feeling out of alignment with who I was. I just didn't know what I could do about it. And at 19, I finally found the courage after, living in this pretend version of my life for so long to transition and become the man that I am. But after I, transitioned, I went right back into the closet because I was scared and terrified of people finding out about my past. I was terrified that I'd be rejected. I was terrified I'd be ostracized. And my whole entire life, I just wanted to be quote unquote normal. I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be like everybody else because I'd spent my whole life being different. And finally, I felt like I was there, and I was so terrified to go back to that place of where I came from. And so I thought at that point that I could just throw myself into work. If I have more accolades, if I work harder, if I made more money, if I have more stuff, I would finally be able to earn my worthiness. But what I found was that I spent so much time trying to prove myself. I spent also at the same time so much effort trying to hide myself because I was so scared of people fully seeing me that I would say enough to be known, but not enough to be seen. And so people knew me, but people wouldn't see me. It's because I didn't see myself, and I was scared for other people to truly see me. And so it wasn't until, and I thought, that wouldn't affect my personal life, but then I found myself constantly passed up for promotions. And it was because I would get feedback around, well, we see you working really hard, and maybe 10, 20 years ago, you got a promotion based on how hard you work, but it doesn't work like that anymore. And I realized that people around me didn't know me because I was constantly scared of sharing myself and allowing myself to be seen. And in my personal life, that affected my mental health, that affected my physical health, and affected the relationships in my life, to a point where my marriage was on the verge of separation. And I found myself in this place. I was working at 6-figure job. I was living in a penthouse. I was traveling all over the world. It seemed amazing on the outside, but then I was so incredibly empty on the inside, and I was burnt out. I was full of anxiety all day long, and my marriage was falling apart. And I realized that something drastically had to change in my life, or else I would truly lose everything and everyone in my life. And that's when I really went in and did the deep inner work. And I went in to do a ton of self-development and really find out about what are the things that are truly holding me back. And it really was at the very core of it that I didn't fully accept myself, and I didn't give myself permission to be who I authentically was. And so finally, after a ton of work on myself, I found the courage to finally come out to the world and share who I am. And it has opened so many incredible doors. And it is the foundation of why I do what I do. Because when I talk about talent development specialist, what that really means, it's about being able to see others and being able to develop them and nurture them in such a way where they feel seen, heard, and valued, to give them the space to bring out their superpowers. Because I know what it's like to not be seen and heard. I know what it's like to not want to be seen and heard because I'm terrified and I don't see myself. And so when I work with teams today, that's a big foundation around how do we get to access your authenticity as your superpower, and also at the same time combine that with high performance, not just from a perspective of getting more sales or making more money, but high performance as in creating the most extraordinary version of your life, which means your relationships, which means how you show up at home, which means with your health, which means how you show up at work and in your business. So I wanted to kind of bring that all together because that is truly the foundation of why I do what I do.
Oh, yes. Oh, Paul, so good. So good. I think that everybody watching can resonate with at least part of the message. And one thing I so appreciate about you is you clearly have done so much work with yourself and for yourself. It's not on yourself, it's like for yourself. There's a big difference in those semantics of, hey, you know what, I got a huge life ahead. And I can't even imagine, Paul, the tension in your own mind and the dichotomy maybe you felt you're living, or even multi personalities that perhaps you had to juggle or something. I'm writing down furious notes. You just wanted to be normal, and then you wanted to be known but not seen. Like, wow. So that's huge disconnection right there. To be one amazing teeter-totter with, well, I think I want this, but wait, I'm not quite ready. And so then what were some of the big growth spurts, so to speak, once you said, okay, it's time for me, and it's time for me to define who I am. There's no such thing as normal. This is who I am, and this is who I want to be. What were some of those epiphanies or growth points for you, Paul, that you really led into the high performance of your own life?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of times when we talk about things like high performance or achieving happiness or whatever those measurable points are, we look at very mechanical things like, what can I do more of in order to create XYZ? Right. But what we don't do a lot of work on is that we don't realize I can give you, I can give you a blueprint to be quote unquote happy in your life or create success. I can give you the blueprint and you can still not create that in your life because it's nothing about what you're doing. It has so much to do with internally who you are being. And all of us have this internal programming that comes from a long time ago, all the way up until when we are children, and all the different things that we were told that were programmed in us that have become a part of our fabric of who we are. And so a lot of times we do things and we don't even realize why we do it. And we get so incredibly frustrated. And that was the place that I was in at this breaking point in my life, because I was so frustrated around, there was like this, I felt like there was this thing inside of me where, I feel like I'm meant for something great, but at the same time, I didn't feel worthy of it. And second, I'm like, I don't even know what that means or how in the world I'm supposed to go about doing it, because my world of what I think is possible for me is this big. And so one big changing point for my life that completely transformed my life was I went into a transformational leadership program that really allowed me to heal a lot of the things that I've had stories with my own parents that I didn't even realize was there. There was a lot of trauma around the passing of my sister that happened 7 years before that I created this story, this paradigm that things couldn't get too good in my life or else they'll be taken away from me. So I was constantly a self-sabotage. I didn't even know it. And then there was this deep sense of realizing, wow, like I don't feel worthy. I don't feel good enough. I don't feel like, I value at the very core of it, and learning to see that I am, and healing those parts of me that other people have told me and I've told myself that I'm not good enough, and taking the steps forward bit by bit to know that I am and to step into something bigger than what I thought was possible. And literally in those 3 months, I lost 20 pounds. I left my corporate job, moved to the US, started my own business, had my first $10,000 client, like completely turned around my life. And that was because I'd spent so much time hating myself that I finally was able to let go and turn the journey around to start learning to love myself. And when I did, I opened myself up to receive, to know that I am worthy of amazing things in my life, and to start actually creating them.
So, wow. Whoo, we just got a dissertation, y'all. So I want to focus on that word worthy for a little bit here, Paul, because there's a connection point, there's a disconnection point. And you said you hated yourself. Now, do you think I feel like I'm hearing some contradiction in here? So help me understand.
Yeah.
Did you really hate yourself, or did you, I mean, hate's such a strong word. And I'm not invalidating it. Clearly I'm not you. And, but when you have such a negative view, yet you still knew there was something great in your words, like, was it the loathing around this kind of cocoon that you had built, and everything coming in that you were willing to either listen to, or the influencing factors? Or like, can you unpack that a little bit, Paul?
Yeah, for sure. So, when I say the word hate, I hated myself. Like, it was that deep, because when I looked, and it's a really great mirror for ourselves if we really stop and look at it, when we look at how we view others. And I was an incredibly judgmental person at that point.
Oh.
I constantly made fun of people. I, was the funny guy, but it was always at the expense of other people. I would, have these incredibly mean dialogues in my head about myself, about people around me. But at the core of it was because I viewed myself that way. Okay. I looked at myself and I thought, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're too short, you don't look good enough. Why are you this way? And then there was all these, I grew up in a Catholic conservative household. And then on top of that, you add religion around, like, why are you this way? What's wrong with you? And having grown up with that dialogue where I was constantly being told, why are you like this? Like, what is wrong with you? And so I started believing that, and I'd be like, what is wrong with me? Why am I this way? Why am I made this way? And I didn't, it was this constant battle, like you said. And that's why I was constantly so exhausted, because internally I had this tension constantly that was happening between, I want something more in my life, and I want to be on stages, and I want to be seen. And at the same time, this other side being like, nobody wants to see you. Nobody cares about you. You're not that interesting. You're not of value. What can you do? You're not that special. And so it's this like constant, kind of tension between the two, this internal battle that's happening. So because I didn't love myself, the way that I viewed others was very judgmental. If anything, I would kind of, because things were so challenging within me, I was constantly self-sabotaging. And if anything, one thing that was a really powerful image that I got when I was going through like this kind of transformation of myself was me like holding the things that I valued close to me and almost having like a torch being like, back off. And then like wanting to like create this ring of fire around me and wanting to see the world burn because my internal world was burning. And so it was like this, it was a very challenging place to be in. It felt like I was trapped in this prison and I was constantly trying to fight my way out, but
Mm.
I didn't know how to. And the more I fought, the more tired I got, and the more frustrated I got, and more angry. And also the other thing I wanted to say too is that I didn't know how to be with my emotions. I
Mm.
had this like deep, I feared anger a lot. And so I suppressed it a lot. And so
Mm.
I made myself wrong for anger. So I just kind of flatlined with my emotions. But what was happening was this like building underneath the
Right.
surface of this energy and these emotions wanting to get out, but had no avenue to do so in a way that was safe or in a way that worked, because I was made wrong for my emotions and I was scared of my own emotions. So that
Mm.
was a big part of it as well, around this healing and this like release of not making myself wrong, and also giving myself space to like feel my feelings, because I never had permission to before that.
So, who was the first person who you realized loved you for who you are
Mm,
when you chose to transition, you chose to
mhm.
really lean into who you wanted to be, Paul? Who was that
Yeah,
person?
for sure. I think the very first person at that particular time was probably my ex-girlfriend. She, we were together for 4.5 years. She wasn't the right person for me in terms of who I would eventually marry, and actually like the person that I get, that would be, on that journey with me in terms of, spending the rest of my life with me. But at that particular junction in my life, she was the only person that fully accepted me for who I was. And she was on that journey as I transitioned with me. And
Wow.
I don't think I honestly could have done it without her. And I'm very thankful for that. Even though, we went our separate ways. But that was really kind of it was the very first relationship I was in. And it was kind of where I discovered like, okay, like who exactly am I, in relationship to her and myself. And then going down that journey. So that was really powerful for me at that time.
Mhm.
And then the person that really fully encompassed is definitely my wife. I mean, she is this beautiful kind of mix between loving me for who I am and standing for my highest self. And that's the thing that I think really made me fall in love with her, and is what makes her so special, because she loved me, but she loved me enough to not let me be a version of myself that would hold me back from who she saw that I could be. So she
Mm.
held me very high, and she took me on, and she called me forward, and she challenged me to not, you know, be victim to circumstances or stories that I've told myself. And she still does that, where she just really stands for who she knows I can be. So that's definitely made the most powerful difference in my life.
Mm. When do you remember, Paul, when you felt yourself loving yourself for who you were?
Mm, yeah, when I was going through uh, this transformational leadership program, there was it was back in person back then. And I remember, like one of the days we were doing this particular exercise, and I remember that I had never felt so free and uninhibited in my life. Like for the first time, people that were there didn't look at me based on my history or what I've done or what I didn't do. And I felt I had the space to be safe and free to be myself.
Mm.
And for so long, I have a ton of energy within me, and I had put it
Really?
in a box when I was, I'm sure you can tell from when I was very young, that was made wrong for it. It was like, hey, you talk too much, and you're too loud, like you too much energy. You need to stop. And so I put that in a box, and I stuffed that away for a very long time, to a point where I forgot what it was like to play. I forgot what it was like to have fun and to
Wow.
be joyful. And so that was probably the very first time in my life where I felt I can just be me here, and there's nothing else to be. There is nothing to prove. I am worthy just as I am right here. And it was just like incredibly, like the highest level of joy that I've ever felt up until that point. because there was nothing else to be but just me. And it was the most powerful and freeing feeling ever to just know that no, you're truly free. And I think that was the first time I really gave myself permission to just let go, and just be.
Wow. And I feel like I can ask you just about any question, correct?
Pretty
How
much, yeah.
how are your relations with your family?
They're good. Actually, they're pretty good. It's funny that when we think about the journey, it's not like that. It's kind of like that. And
Right.
so that's kind of been my journey with my family. I mean, when I first came out, they didn't accept it. They didn't like it. They didn't agree with it. Um, the thing that I was very thankful about was that despite all that was going on, I wasn't kicked out of my house, and I was still, allowed to stay in my house. And I wasn't homeless, and my parents were still, I was still they were still in my life. And they supported me in the best way that they could while they were trying to grapple with it
Sure.
themselves.
Sure.
Yeah. And, so, I mean, in the first 5 years, it was incredibly challenging because while my parents were accepting, they weren't fully accepting yet. They hadn't come to a place themselves where they
Mm.
fully accepted. So when we go in public, it was so incredibly awkward because we would literally, when we go to grocery stores, like go separate ways so that we don't like bump into people and have to have this like awkward conversation. And when we go to restaurants, when I was with my ex-girlfriend at the time, my parents would introduce my ex-girlfriend as their daughter, and I'm the boyfriend. So it was like this, like
Oh, no
really awkward.
kidding.
Yeah, it was really awkward. And it was uncomfortable, but I got it I understood, because like I understand you don't want to have this conversation in like public with these people that you see like once a year, maybe. And so, but it was still, what I didn't realize it was doing inside was this constant affirmation of, you're not enough, you're not good enough. We are embarrassed by you. We don't want to be seen with you. And so it kind of continued to affirm my like hiding and not wanting to be seen, because I was so afraid of people actually seeing me for who I was. But the thing about it is that actually what happened was, it was the most unwanted of circumstances, that I would never have wanted it to happen that way. But sometimes it's like any situation, I believe, can be turned for good, if we choose for it to. And that was when my sister passed away very suddenly. And when that happened, it was like, it
Wow.
was almost like she gave me permission to be seen
Wow.
without her telling me that.
Sure.
Because when that happened, I was the very first time in public that I was acknowledged as her brother and their son. And I
Wow.
would speak, it's like her brother's going to come and speak. And because of the circumstance, that was the very first time I had like left the church that I was at for a very long time. And I wasn't, around that community. And when that happened, that community came back together, and I was in contact with a lot of like, kind of aunties and uncles and stuff that I haven't talked to in many, many years. And because of the situation, who I was and my transition just wasn't important. It just was, not important at that moment, based on, of course, what happened and the tragedy that we were trying to grapple with and deal with.
Right.
And so it gave me actually this pathway to be seen for the first time, but it was the most unwanted of circumstances.
Right.
And after that, I think it really allowed my parents to see that all the things that they thought mattered really didn't. And especially since I was the only child left at that point, it really turned around our relationship. And for them, they're like, you're the only child left, and whatever that we held on to before, like that really doesn't matter at the end of the day. So that's really changed our relationship, and is still very much on its path of me developing a relationship with them, that is different than the one that I had before growing up. I mean, I didn't have a relationship with my dad growing up at all for a very, very long time. And we're just on that path of getting to know each other, if that makes sense. So, but at the same time, I'm very thankful that my family is supportive. They love me. And, it's just always another level for us to go in terms of like really deepening that relationship. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Family's a funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's That's a whole other dissertation for another time. And I'm
Absolutely.
glad,
Yeah.
glad to hear that. I'm truly sorry for the loss of your sister.
Thank you.
I'm sure she's incredibly proud of you.
Thank you.
All the same. And so with all of this, wow, this is so great. Paul, if you were going to give, or you're not going, if it's no if, it's like, Paul, give us 3 pieces of advice from your vantage point that you now fully embrace, that you enjoy, that you find fruitful, fulfilling, whatever blank you want to fill in as you continue to connect with yourself and with others in the world. Now, I know that's really big. I know you're a huge thinker, so I'm sure you can wrap your head around it. But if you would give 3 pieces of advice, like, here's how I think about connection with who I am now based on where I've come from, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
So just to clarify, this 3 pieces of advice around connection, like based on
Yeah,
connection or anything.
thinking of yourself and thinking of like how you feel connected in the world, starting with yourself, because now you know that you are your biggest, baddest, best self. You have the right people around you who understand. The people who don't quite understand are still working on that, but you're still focused on you with loving yourself and knowing that you are pretty damn great. And this is how you choose to connect. And I would actually add the sidebar, because you could share, like, how have you disconnected from what was, if that's helpful too, because it's just as important, just like you talked about earlier, to let go, because acceptance is simply our beliefs put on somebody else. So either building with connection or building with disconnection.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting in terms of when I think about that piece, like you said, around like, what did you like let go of, and what are you leaning into now? I think one thing that has been really, really powerful, and we hear this a lot around, how do I break through this, or how do I get rid of this part of me, or how do I change this completely? What I realized in my own journey is that who we were at different junctions of our life, and call it the good, bad, and the ugly, all of that actually never goes away. We spend so much time trying to get rid of it, but actually the secret is that you're always going to be you, all parts of you. And it's not about getting rid of parts of you. It's learning to be in relationship with the parts of you and understanding when those thoughts come up that don't serve you. It's not wrong, but it's because that's how you have survived up until now. They are there to try to protect you, even though it doesn't seem like it. They're trying to protect you from being hurt, trying to protect you from other things that are happening around you. They're trying to keep you safe, but it's just the way in that they're keeping you safe isn't working for where you are now headed next and where you are now at in your life. So for me, not learning not to hate myself in terms of even the parts, like not in terms of the way that I did before, but the parts that I didn't like about myself that I used to be, learning not to hate that, but if anything, have compassion for that. And if anything, incorporating that into who I am today, as I see it, it still comes up. Like, and I think that's where a lot of times we go through a lot of these self-mastery and self-development and inner work types of programs, and we think that it just disappears like this magic pill that we take. It's not. It doesn't disappear. The voice gets quieter, your voice gets stronger, and you just learn to be in relationship with it. So a lot of times now when I hear those voices in my head, like telling myself certain things, if anything, I'm just more aware of it. And I get that I just have like this conversation with myself around, like, I hear you. I hear that you're really scared right now, or I hear you that this is coming up for you. And I want to let you know that I'm choosing something else. Or I want to let you know that I am worthy. I am enough. I am powerful. I get to have more than enough in my life. I get to have abundance. All these different things. I just tell myself, I just talk back to it, and I affirm with something different. I don't push it away. I don't make it wrong. So that's really, really important. Number one is to, not even whatever it is, it doesn't go away. And that's actually a secret sauce. It's not that it doesn't work, whatever you've been doing with yourself. It's not that it's not working, or why am I still like this? It's actually that it's just always going to be a part of you. You just can't cut it off. You just learn to be with it. I would say the other aspect of it is that the most important investment you're ever going to make, that is going to be the hardest for you to ever grasp or to find the tangible in terms of like results or tangible, I would say, I guess, growth of that investment with, is the investment that you're going to make on yourself, because getting to know yourself is the most important thing that you could possibly do. Because when you know yourself, you can know your patterns, you can know what's coming up for you, because it's never about the thing that's happening. There's something that's occurring underneath that for you. And when you really, really know yourself, you can become that person that shifts yourself, instead of needing other things to do it for you, or feeling like you need to depend on somebody else, or you depend on something else. So that's such an important thing, is to continue to search for your own personal growth, whatever that gets to look like, and do it with support, with people in your life that can hold you to that level of your highest self when you don't see it in yourself, to have someone to borrow their faith in you, borrow their belief in you, what they see in you. So I think that's incredibly important. I think the last part really is to know that there's no need to be anything else but you. I think a lot of times we are scared of, if other people see our true selves, that they may not like us, or we might get rejected, or that we might put ourselves at risk. And so we play it really, really safe. And if you look at a majority of how we are in society, it's taught to fit us in a box. But if anything, by fitting ourselves in the box, we're trying to constantly be something else that we're not, and to convince who we authentically are as wrong. And so that's this, and that is this constant battle that we spend a lot of energy doing, when we can actually utilize that energy to create something amazing for ourselves and other people in our lives, when we just stop fighting against ourselves. That's really what it ends up doing. So your biggest superpower isn't the amount of money you make, or isn't the influence you have on others, or needing external things to validate you. Your biggest superpower is already within you. It's kind of like one of those things where when you look at superheroes, like that moment that they realize that they have the superpower, it's that when you realize your superpower is just within you, and it's just who you authentically are, what you're already good at, the ideas that come to you that maybe other people told you were crazy, but actually it's just unique because that's your superpower. When you realize that's just you, and you stop fighting against yourself to make that wrong, and you just embrace it for what it is, that superpower grows, and you learn to leverage it, so that now you can use that superpower in the world to impact others and to create your best version of your extraordinary life. So,
I'm gonna send you a cape. This is so good, Paul. I'm furiously writing notes. I'm like, you gave like 15 different good. So it's so, wow, so powerful. And clearly you're loving who you are. We're loving who you are. And this is all incredibly helpful and useful. So as we get to the close of the show, if you're watching live, we'll stay afterwards. If you have any, Paul, if you can stay for a few minutes. Is that possible for you today?
Yep, I can stay. Yep.
Great. Okay, great. So if our live studio audience has any questions or comments, or wants to engage a little bit, we'll do that. But the closing question today, even though I'd love to stay here with you for so many hours, is who would you want at your table to connect with right now?
Who would I want? Am I like anybody in the world? Is that what you're saying? Or is it just kind of like
anybody in the world? Anybody in the world.
Who would I want at my table? That's a really great question. Authentically for me right now, like I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Brene Brown. That would be amazing. I just love her work. Really respect what she does. Another person that I really respect that I would love to have conversations with is Barack Obama. regardless of politics, I just really respect how he shows up as a leader and as a father and a husband. I think that at the end of the day, how you show up at home and with the people in your life is just as equally as important as how you show up to the world. Because at the end of the day, that's how you show up. One way is how you show up every way. So that would be really amazing. Yeah. And for me, I have the soft spot for like corporate America, just because I come from corporate, and I used to think, if everyone just leaves corporate and becomes an entrepreneur, that'd be amazing. You would, have the freedom to create whatever you want and be able to finally be free from that kind of corporate rat race. But I realized that entrepreneurship isn't for everybody. And so for me, I feel like there is so much transformation that gets to happen in corporate within organizations, so that the workplace is not a place that has that typical stereotype of the grind of
Right.
I just need to be here for the paycheck, or I hate my job, or the job is the job and I got to grind through it. But it can actually be a place where people can really feel at home and thrive.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I think we spend 80% of our day working. And so for me, that's definitely part of a soft spot that I have in terms of my mission, is to talk with a lot of business leaders around, what is under, like, how we can really bring that to life, so that everyone feels like they can be their superpower self at work and wherever they are.
So good. Excellent. Right on. Well, you're welcome at my table every single day. So come on over when you're in Montana next time, or wherever you're at. So,
I would love to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for making time. Paul Can, everybody. Yes, I can. YESIKAN.com is where you can find out more about fantastic, remarkable Paul. And we will see you next month on At the Table.